he says, he said, when Israel heard about it, he says, when the Israelites heard about this, they was afraid of Philistines. And the Philistines, they was getting together to pray, to try to get back on the Lord's side. And they look and say, oh my God, we trying to get to the Lord, and here they come to get it. So they was afraid. So notice what they said. He said they were afraid of the Philistines. Then the Israelites said to Samuel, keep on crying out to the Lord our God, so that he may save us from the hand. So they're like, all right, you all we got, Lord.
Amen.
So what's the point here? The point is very simple. Don't exhaust all your resources before you go to God. Go to him first, save your resources.
Yes, Lord.
So many of us, we expend all of our energy fighting something, or dealing with something, or trying to prevent something, and we should have just went to God in the first place.
Amen.
Amen. So they were like, when they figured out all we have is the Lord answers prayers. So you notice verses 9, 10, and 11, and 12, you see that the request was answered. Somebody read the last verses 9 through 12 for me.
And Samuel took a sucking lamb and offered it for a burnt offering holy unto the Lord. And Samuel cried unto the Lord for Israel, and the Lord heard him. And as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to battle against Israel. But the Lord thundered with a great thunder on that day upon the Philistines, and discomfited them, and they were smitten before Israel. And the men of Israel went out to Mizpah, and pursued the Philistines, and smote them, until they came under Bethkar. Then Samuel took a stone, and set it between Mizpah and Shin, and called the name of it Ebenezer, saying, hitherto hath the Lord helped us.
Amen. So when you look at verse 9, Samuel took a nursing lamb and he offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. So Samuel cried out to the Lord on Israel's behalf, and the Lord answered him. And you notice in the Old Testament period, they'd use animal sacrifice was common in religious ceremonies. After the people admitted their sin, then they give the appropriate offering to burn to the Lord so the Lord can cover their sins. Not remove them, but cover them. So the people's repentance was symbolized in animal sacrifice. And Samuel cried out to the Lord on their behalf. Moreover, the Lord heard him. So what you gonna say?
He used a lamb that was still nursing, a baby lamb, so there was no sin, there was nothing, there was no blemish
Pure.
in that lamb.
Right,
You
perfect.
have to be careful when you
And-
burn offerings, because you have to make sure it's pure without blemish.
And the lamb was a foreshadow to,
Jesus Christ.
right, because he was sinless, right? Now he sinned, then that lamb, it will be a connection, but it had to be,
Right.
it was pure, and it has to be unblemished, because that's how the Lord was going to be represented. And how do we represent the Lord in our daily lives? To the best of our ability. And that's why he's our advocate, right? And that's why we can go to him. And as believers, we should not only pray for ourselves and of our own needs, but also intercede for others. And while we all probably pray for the sick, there are others we should pray for, including earthly rulers and the lost. These are often the same people. They're usually one and the same. And we see that in verse 10 that the prayer was answered. But that day, so what did the Lord do? He thundered loudly against the Philistines, causing them to panic, and they was defeated by Israel. Not only that, then you notice in verse 11, then the men of Israel left Mizpah and chased the Philistines, striking them down all the way to the area below Bethkar. In other words, when the Lord answers your prayers, it give you, you're not going to squander this opportunity now. So then they was encouraged, and they possessed courage in what the Lord did. In other words, they didn't go on their own. they was led by the Lord, and they was led by a great preacher. I mean, he's a preacher too, but a great leader in Samuel. Because notice what he did. He said, gather the people, and I'm going to pray on your behalf. That's the first thing he did. Second thing he did, he said, look, if you're going to come back to the Lord, these are the things you do. Good leader, because some people, leaders, sometimes we as leaders, we don't do what God tells us to do. We try to water it down so we can keep people liking us. And when we get to the point in our lives where we don't care if people like us or not, but we do what God said and watch us bless you in front of your people that don't like you.
Amen.
Amen. Because if you don't be honest with them, you're doing a disservice to them.
You really are.
So they gonna, so they get chastised, but then you get chastised for not doing it well, and then they get chastised, and they may walk away from God because they didn't know why the Lord would do such a thing. Because we failed as leaders, being the leaders of our home, being the leaders of our churches, being the leaders in the community. We fail because we don't want to tell the truth, because we care more about popularity than we care about doing God's will. I don't care if I lose everybody, but I know I'm doing God's will, so be it. I got God. That's more than anybody in the world.
You're doing a disservice to them. You really are.
Exactly, because God can see in the future that we can't see. And then in verse 12, Samuel took a stone and he placed it between Mizpah and Shen, and he named it Ebenezer, saying, up to here the Lord has helped us. Amen. So every good leader always teach you, always can lead you to the future, but every great leader always have you to look back. When we have our church anniversaries, we read the church history. Why? Because we want to understand, I didn't get you here. We stand on the shoulders of some great man before who followed the Lord. And all we do is continue the projection to go higher. And even when I leave the scene, the next person come on to take it a little bit higher, because that's just how God is a God of multiplication and progression. He's not a God of status quo, stay here. Amen. So this is a whole thing about leadership. This whole thing dealt with, you saw the leadership. And sometimes, how do you lead the people who don't have a whole lot of confidence in themselves? Truthfully, honestly, carefully, tenderly, prayerfully. That's how you handle it. Amen? Any thoughts, any concerns, any issues? Amen. So all of us can use these lessons. Amen?
Amen.
Let us worship and give